Alright, I had to take like a week and a half break. I had a surgery and it just jacked my voice all up. So I'm back at like 70% now. And hopefully I'll get to that other 30% pretty soon. But I feel a lot better and I feel like it's a lot easier to talk. So I wanted to jump into this video. Pay attention to how these shooters are moving in this first video.
This is the earliest footage we have of the gunman. It's not clear how soon after the attack started they began filming, but it captures the rest of the event. It takes place on Campbell Parade at the northern end of Bondi Beach. Both men are standing on this bridge, firing down into this area of parkland where the Hanukkah festival was taking place. About 30 seconds after this footage starts, one of the men, the one in white trousers, moves off the bridge to take up a position around here, from where he can fire at point-blank range at the crowds. 2 minutes and 50 seconds after the video begins, we have the extraordinary moment.
When I first watched this video, it was pretty relevant and known to me almost immediately that these dudes have had some type of training. Normal civilians that go out and commit acts like this don't move and shoot the way these guys are moving and shooting, and then over each other. Constant movement, just the way that they're engaged with their firearm, like pointing them at targets and stuff. Most people don't spend the time to get themselves trained, they go, especially in these states where there's like constitutional carry, they'll go out and no training whatsoever and be confident carrying a firearm every day. There's clearly, I'm not saying 100% they're like military or police trained, but at the very least they've had some type of training, whether they suck that, as civilians and paid for that, but it looks more militarized.
When a passerby decides to tap him. Oh! He disarms him and gets him to back off, before eventually laying down the weapon and taking cover behind the tree. 60 seconds after he was disarmed, the man in white trousers is back on the bridge and firing with a different weapon.
Everyone is touting that man as a hero that disarmed him, but if you paid attention, they said within 60 seconds later, he was already back on the bridge, taking shots at more people. When something like this is going on and a human has already shown you the disgusting, vile person that they are and they've already taken life, you showing that person mercy when you have the power in your hands, to put down that threat, what you've done is put other lives at risk. And because that man didn't just put that man down, he went right back to doing what he was doing beforehand, and more people got hurt and possibly died. There's another video that kind of drills home this point that I'm trying to make about him, and we'll listen to it here without sound. I just want you to pay attention to how the guy's firing. That's a bolt action gun. For a lot of people that don't hunt or don't shoot, it's not a semi-automatic gun like a these popular AR rifles, that most people think of when you say like a rifle or an AR-15. People know what that looks like. A bolt action gun, you have to rack the bolt, chamber the bolt, fire it. I use numerous different calibers in bolt action for hunting. The way that he's just throwing around in chamber shooting, throwing around in chamber shooting, he's had some type of training to get that down and do it as quick as he's doing. The average person that just picks up a bolt action rifle and doesn't have much practice on one isn't gonna rack, what was that, 4 or 5 shots in that amount of time? Absolutely crazy. Now, for like 2 weeks before this happened, all these independent media channels and all these people have been talking about there was going to be these false flags going on at the end of December. Is it just a coincidence, or could it be that, right now, since the first time since Israel became a nation, folks are looking at her as unfavorably, less favorably than more favorably? That's a huge shift. That's never been a thing since Israel's been a nation. For the majority of the time, people have looked at her more favorably. We're living in a time now when people are finally questioning, the power and the grab that Israel has on our government, specifically speaking of politics and the power that she yields over the politicians that we have. I want to play one last video that really drills home a good point about these events.
And how it's being exploited, and what Benjamin Netanyahu says he now expects.
So they're obviously there to shape a narrative. That this is narrative deployment.
What she's talking about, to give y'all some context, is earlier in the video, they're speaking about why is Mossad going there in the first place? Why is Mossad going to this beach in Australia, or this town in Australia, after this event? What in the world would Mossad have to do with going there when this happened in Australia, in a foreign nation?
And to have Mossad on the ground there is very critical to what gets exposed and what doesn't. And I would say there's zero connection to Iran that is documented, zero. As a matter of fact, there's even pictures on the Sun's Facebook of him in front of a library shelf of Sunni Islamic material. So there's literally no connection to Iran at all. That's another narrative deployment. And when these narrative deployments happen with no factual basis, the point of doing that in the media is get people to then source that false report in other reports so that you can deploy that narrative. There has to be somebody to report it, and sources say that source.
One of the main reasons that I stopped reading and ingesting any mainstream media is because the same narrative is repeated over and over and over and over through every single one of those channels. It doesn't matter if they lean right or they lean left. I would say more than probably 75-80% of the time, they always push the same narrative. And it's funny, you can go online and you can look at these clips where people have taken, news clips from all these different channels, small channels down to the state and cities that they're in, and they'll play them side by side with videos from, news channels from other cities and states, sometimes halfway across the US, and the talking points that the people use are almost down to the exact same word. They always have the same buzzwords, the same sentences. They describe things the same way. It's all a pony show, man. It's there to get you to lean a certain way on the narrative and on the topic, and it's there to influence your thinking.
sources means the intelligence told them to write this article so that we can then source that article in all of the rest of the articles to deploy the narrative.
Makes sense.
Also, well, there's so many things I want to unpack with you here. The police presence here, if you look, eyewitnesses said the police showed up and they stood down for about 20 minutes. They allowed the shooter to continue, even though there's a police station right.
Stood down for 20 minutes. I don't know if you've ever just sat by yourself with nothing going on and timed out how long a minute actually is and what you can do in just 1 minute, yet alone 5 minutes. Sit down and time a minute and then 5 minutes, and then try to imagine 20 minutes. That amount of time is such a large amount of time. To stand down for that long. Why? Why? Why would they do that? There's only one reason why, and that's to allow the most amount of casualties and the most amount of chaos as possible. That's what you tend to see with these false flags, is order out of chaos. They'll create the chaos, and they got some scapegoat to come in and tell you that it's this way, and you're supposed to feel bad for Israel afterwards because there's some bad guy, when a lot of the times when you dig deep into these things, these events, they have the same layout. It's always tailored the same way. Personally, I think we've seen more psyops the last 5 years than we saw previously the last probably 75 years.
Next to Bondi Beach, so there was tons of police there, but they stood around essentially and watching this for about 20 minutes and did nothing. We're hearing a lot of like these stand down orders in the past few years.
Sounds like October 7th, doesn't it?
Yes, at least it wasn't 7 hours of standing down, but 20 minutes is enough for a lot of innocent people on the beach to be shot and killed.
But you have those in school shootings as well.
Right.
Where, like Uvalde, where everybody just kind of stands around and lets the massacre happen, and then, okay, we'll move in. To me, that's a clear indication that there's planning ahead of time. In one of the videos, they even show a cop guy going by that bridge while the shooter's actively shooting. So,
Like, what's going on down there?
You watch that full 10 minutes video, you can see him just go right by the bridge.
Yeah.
As he's just picking.
And this lady makes a good point. You see this time and time again with these big acts of violence. The response to them always just takes so long to happen. Maybe if it was a 1 or 2 time thing, but when you're looking at these events on a large scale and so many of them have the same markers, you can't help but sit back and think critically for a second. Is there maybe more to going on than what I'm being told? When I first started looking into these things, I made the realization, and it kind of set me back for a second and really had me thinking, that I realized the government that I live in is perfectly fine with offing its own citizens to get the results from things that it wants. So it doesn't really give a damn about any of us. If they can make a martyr out of us to make something good for themselves, or to, have something line up, some type of policy or something, they're going to take that every single time. I think when these events happen, rather than just sit back and believe what you're being told, you should ask questions. Never just take somebody at their face value word, because you don't know that person's morality. You don't know if they're lying to you or if they're trying to influence you a certain way. And that's really what it comes down to when it's these 3-letter agencies. That's why I don't think you can have any 3-letter agencies in a supposedly free country, because you'll never have informed and free people with intelligence agencies. What they care the most about is influence, yielding it, controlling it, with them operating. there's just no chance that the people of that country that they're operating in or on behalf of, there's no chance that they're going to be informed fully with the truth. You'll always have these false flags. You'll always have these narratives. You'll never get the questions answered when you ask them. You know, how many of these people, made campaign promises on the Epstein files. Then they get in, and then you never get anything from it. There's a different standard for these elites and these politicians, especially when it comes to committing crimes and the accountability from them. Now, if me and you, as the peasants that we are to them, if we commit the same crimes, you can guarantee you would never see your family again.